one of the most recognizable symbols in Japanese folklore is the kitsune fox. Its mysterious character has evolved throughout history, portraying it with different characteristics and magical powers, and making this animal one of the most recurring in graphic representations, both in traditional formats such as ukiyo-e and in new formats such as manga or anime. Given the particularities of the kitsune figure, this work will focus on the characteristics of the aforementioned representations, both in ukiyo-e and anime, while taking Japanese folklore and literature as a theoretical basis in order to explain such particularities, especially in the areas related to the kitsune's ability as shapeshifter and to the characteristics that are usually assigned to them, based on the gender they are represented with. First of all, it is worth noting the close relationship between the kitsune fox and Inari goddess. The association between this deity and the fox is so common that sometimes the boundaries between both characters are blurred and end up being unified in the same figure, so it is not surprising finding representations where the goddess Inari is represented in the form of a fox. This association between Inari and the fox has not always been so clear. Not all deities somehow related to rice, agriculture, cereals, or food, like Inari, are accompanied by the fox, nor all fox deities are associated with Inari. The first historical association between a spirit fox and an Inari shrine registered in the written sources dates from the 10th century and portrays a noble woman who secludes in Inari shrines for 7 days. After these 7 days, this woman receives the protection of a fox spirit, which will help the lady to have a successful career in the court, while supporting the woman so she can manage to conquer the emperor and become his wife. From that moment on, references to the Inari fox multiply in the literature in Japan. For example, Buddhist tradition registers the story of a couple of foxes which asked the goddess to let them protect her shrine. So the goddess granted their wish and gave them the names of Osusuki and Akomati. A text of the 11th century makes reference to Akomati from Inari's mountain, indicating thus that the association between these animals and the goddess was already fully established by this moment. Regarding this, it is important to note that the goddess Toyoke, one of the agricultural deities that syncretized into the figure of Inari, was designated with the name Miketsu, a word written using the homophone kanjis for 3 foxes, maybe originating in this way the identification between the agricultural deity and the foxes even before the birth of the Inari cult took place. In this regard, it is noteworthy to point that the belief in these animals' powers and in their status as specially gifted to perform protection and divination rituals is an interesting fact, dating the first written references on the use of foxes for ritual purposes around the 15th century. The foxes that guard the entrances of the Inari shrines are always white, a fact that some researchers relate to the Chinese legend that narrates that foxes more than 800 years old turn white, get 9 tails, and develop supernatural powers. Though sometimes a 9-tailed kitsune isn't represented with white fur, as we can see in the example on screen. In this regard, it should be noted that all foxes are believed to be so wise that they can predict the future. This portrait of foxes as auspicious figures was probably related to their ability as divinators and receptors of oracular messages. The belief in these animal psychic powers still survives in the Ainu culture, and it was the probable cause of the appearance of priestess Miko and mediums specialized in dealing with these animals. For example, the Kitsune Sukai, a kind of priestess specialized in exorcising kitsunes, as well as the practice of invoking protective spells against these animals' tricks and possessions. However, even though in the first moments the foxes were attributed with an auspicious and magical character, a good magical character, as well as with great wisdom, there are multiple stories that portray these animals as tricky and pernicious beings. On the other hand, it is known that the belief in evil foxes that possessed people wasn't known in Hokkaido until the 19th century, and that is a fact which seems to point to the possibility that the evil side of these animals may be late introduction from the continent, specifically from China. Probably the indigenous cult considered the fox a magical and beneath creature and not a treacherous one, as in later times we'll consider. But which evils were the foxes blamed for? Well, the fox represents the figure of what many mythologies call the trickster. That is, a creature associated with an untamed nature due to its independence and wild spirit. These trickster characters are attributed to cause strange events in nature, such as mysterious lights at night, rocks emitting sulfuric vapors, volcanic eruptions, rain with a sunny sky, etc. That is to say, everything unexpected and uncontrollable as the nature's forces. Foxes, as a representation of these nature forces, are amoral, that is to say, they do not make good or evil by principle, but they act according to their desires, situation, or own benefit, and not following an unique and controllable pattern. For example, nature cannot be called evil for causing earthquakes or benevolent for making plants grow. And this is the same for this kind of tricksters in every mythology. Thus, if foxes are treated with correct manners, they can bring you benefits, but they can also play an unexpected trick on you if you let your guard down. Among the tricks these tricksters can perform, foxes are attributed a wide range of talents that they regularly use against humans. From possession to transformation into humans who deceive people, the catalog of antics these animals can play is broad and consistent with the role that they also play in Chinese mythology. Written references from Han Dynasty refer to shape-shifting foxes that deceive humans and that probably inspired Japanese stories portraying these animals as malicious beings, dating the oldest Japanese written references from the 11th century on, and specifically being the novel Genji Monogatari by Murasaki Shikibu, the first Japanese text talking about trickster kitsunes. Although there are previous stories that talk about the transformation of foxes into human beings. For example, the one in the Nihon Ryoki portraying a man who discovered that his wife was actually a fox that had shifted into human appearance. Anyway, in some of these stories, like the latter, foxes' shape-shifting power is not always used by these animals to cause evil, as they use it sometimes to help humans, as it can be expected from a proper trickster. Regarding their ability to possess people, these possessions often include unsocial behaviors such as unusual eating habits, inappropriate language, destructive violence, and one of the solutions for these demonic possessions was to lead the possessed person to any of Inari's main shrines. Another option could be to put the possessed under an exorcism, usually carried out by Miko priestess or members of the so-called animal spirit families which control these kind of magical creatures and can order them to abandon the possessed body. Another of the main characteristic of these foxes is their association with the telluric world. As foxes dig their burrows into the ground, people have related them to the entrance to the other world, while their burrows, usually located in the mountains, constitute the connection or entrance passage to the depth of the earth. Thus, foxes can cross the border between our world and the hereafter, functioning as a messenger while serving at the same time as a guide for the deceased on their way to the world beyond the grave. This role as connectors between both worlds was probably very similar to the one attributed in Han time to nine-tailed foxes, which were represented in the tombs as a symbol of immortality. In the same way, this role as a telluric animal also emphasizes the very function of the fox stem as a place for death and resurrection, as it is the place where these animals give birth. In fact, all over Japan there are kitsunesuka, or fox burial mounds, which are natural or artificial burial mounds located near rice fields where the agricultural deity Inari was worshipped. When researchers have carried out archaeological excavations of some of these burial mounds, they have often unearthed burial chambers from the Kofun period, a fact which could connect the agricultural kami cult with the mountain kami cult, being the last one represented by the shape of the burial mound. The role of the foxes as fertility guarantors is also reflected in other more prosaic, or if you prefer, preliminary aspects. In Fushimi Taisha Shrine, there was a sanctuary where foxes were worshipped, and where Miko performed laugh spells, along with all the magic tricks to promote prosperous life for the requesting persons. This prosperity could be obtained in several ways, such as, for example, by becoming an imperial concubine. This association between the fox and love issues has led foxes to be related to prostitutes, as many of the stories about foxes are about kitsunes that change into the appearance of a beautiful woman in order to rob or seduce the men they meet by making them being victims to their schemes. Sometimes these kitsune were not necessarily evil, but their extraordinary sexual desire could damage the seduced man, a fact that has been explained by kitsune's need to store semen or vital power in order to achieve a higher life status. In this respect, it should be noted that even nowadays the term kitsune is used to refer to prostitutes. This association between foxes and prostitutes could have been the cause of the patronage of Inari on sexual workers as well. In the tale of Asi, dated in the 4th century, it is portrayed the story of a man who returns after being possessed by a fox with the appearance of a woman, who seduced him to have a sexual relation with her. A Taoist priest explains with these words the relationship between foxes and lured women. It is a mountain spirit. The fox was originally a lecherous woman in ancient times. Her name is Asi. She turned into a fox, which is why mountain spirits are often called Asi. Finally, it is important to note that foxes rarely transform into handsome young men who cheat on women, but it is often the other way around. The popular explanation for this fact is that the fox, being a darkest animal, or Jin principle, only attracts those light beings, or Yang principle, so only men could be attracted by their charms. Anyway, there are few, but there are some specific examples of men cheating on women too. This female side of the fox could be related to the fact that in some areas of Japan existed to believe in animal familiars, and only women could have this kind of protective animal spirits so that the male members of their families could neither have them nor could they inherit them. This relationship between the characters of some animals and their fox's companions is often portrayed in domestical and familiar environments. While being a familiar animal, sometimes kitsunes are in good terms with other familiar animals, such as tanukis or inugamis, as many ukiyo-e and anime show with profusion. The tip of the fox's tails has been associated, together with the hypnotic character, with fire. This could be the explanation for the immunity of this creature to fire and their capacity to control this element. While some ukiyo-e and anime represent this control of the fire with burning characters, others have kitsunes that can play tricks with fireballs, and some of them show this control of the fire element through a smoking kitsune, which usually is a strong-tempered character as well. This relationship between foxes and fire has also led to the believing on the capacity of igniting their tails tips, as we can see in the screened images belonging to an anime and an ukiyo-e. Thus, there is a popular belief about foxes' weddings, which are night processions through the mountains, which can be distinguished by the succession of lights, either foxes lit tails or lanterns, and depending on the area of Japan, meeting with a fox's wedding can be interpreted as an auspicious symbol of fertility and good luck, or as a bad omen and death prediction. Finally, it should be noted that another of kitsune's areas of influence is that of material wealth. Some foxes are represented with a key in their mouth or under their paw. This key has been interpreted as the bronze key, that is to say, the key to wealth. Regarding foxes' role as protectors of the rice production and wealth guarantors as well, the Fushimi Inari Taisha has specific places within its enclosure to perform rituals for begging for money and good fortune. In addition to this, many Inari shrines sell amulets which are decorated with a white fox, and which are supposed to be especially powerful protection against evil spirits that may cause poverty. Foxes, as harvest protectors from ancient times, when taxes were paid in rice, continue to be the guarantors of prosperity and wealth, and these animals are especially worshipped among businessmen and geishas, who usually have an Inari shrine at their homes where they pray to an image of the goddess together with the foxes, or to an image of the kitsunes themselves without the Inari image. As it has been seen during the presentation, the traditional ukiyo-e and anime representations fit perfectly with that folklore portraits, although the anime format can provide us with some variables that, due to the specific characteristics of the format, couldn't be counted on while studying ukiyo-e or printed formats. One of the most important of these variables is the sound. After a preliminary analysis of around 100 animal characters representing a kitsune, a series of conclusions with a gender focus can be drawn regarding the representation of these fantastic creatures. First of all, when the character remains during all the series in the animal shape, they usually have male voice, except for some specific case. 1. When they are strong-tempered women with a higher social status than the rest of the character in the series, or 2. When they are childish feminine foxes represented in a chibi and kawaii way. In addition to this, it is more common among male-voiced characters to possess enormous destructive powers and to have an aggressive and violent character. This is especially suitable for those kitsune which are directly related to the telluric world. On the other hand, the representations of kitsune as humans are not subject to aesthetic norms, having several examples of characters with different physical complexions. Anyway, there are some differences depending on the gender they transform on. When they shapeshift on women, they tend to be young, either with sinuous shapes and large breasts, either with childish features. On many occasions, women keep the animal ears on their heads. But when shaping into men, the physical characteristic can vary from a diverse range, not being limited to a specific good-looking appearance. And only in a very small amount of cases they keep the animal ears on. It is also worthy of being highlighted the fact that when the fox is associated with priestess or a deity, assimilable or not to Inari, they usually are male characters acting as a protector of a young human woman. This role of male kitsune protector of female character is represented in several ways. For example, in the form of a defending warrior, as a bodyguard, as a butler or servant of the house, or even as a kind of parental referent for the female human character. Finally, it should be noted that the ability to shapeshift is not usually subject to coherence with the gender of the character while in its animal shape, although it is observed a pattern in male foxes that can transform both into women and men, while the feminine foxes usually maintain their original gender when they transform into humans. It is worth noting as well a particular case where the character claims to have forgotten its gender, due to being very old or almost immortal, in fact. So this is the reason why this character transforms indistinctly into a man or a woman when adopting human form. Thank you so much for your attention.